Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Hope you can all hear me. Everything looks to be working okay here, but as always, let me know if you have any issues or anything. Can't hear me, can't hear the music, or something like that. But hopefully today, I think last week we had a couple of small problems with the internet, but this week hopefully we're going to be fine, but we'll see. As always, if there's anything going on, just let me know. I can see a few of you already here. Hi Cosmodium, as always, thanks for joining us. I think today is going to be a nice fun one. We're going to be looking at a small section of just an absolute iconic piece of music. I'm going to be focusing today in particular on Chorus, our kind of flagship choral library Chorus, which I think is just, I'm obviously biased because I work with and for Imperia, but ultimately, even if I didn't, I would hands down say that Chorus is one of the most, if not the most usable and friendly and easy to use choral libraries out there. And it can do pretty much everything that you could want from a choral library. It's my go-to for almost every circumstance. It works, now and again, you might need a very specific thing, but, Chorus just works for so many different purposes. And of course, we've got the additional effects in there now as well, which are also fantastic too. But today we're just going to be using the good old-fashioned sort of main articulations. In fact, we're probably only going to be using one articulation today, the energetic syllables. We'll have a look at some of the others, but I think we're really only going to need one. And this is the great thing about Chorus. You're going to see as we go through today, I'm going to use this one patch and it's just going to sound pretty much great out of the box. Farvey, my favorite Audio Imperia plugin, Adam Harvey. Yes, that's what I am now, an Audio Imperia plugin. I get plugged in every Tuesday for a couple of hours. Hey all, my first time joining a live video, loving all the Audio Imperia videos. Thank you very much for joining us, Jacob. Yeah, it's great. It's great when we have some of the old, crowds, some of our regulars like Cosmodium, and I know Kaya's been joining us a lot recently, but it's also incredible when we get new people as well, because, it's great to see new people joining us and new people having fun with us. And whether you catch these live, whether you catch them afterwards, it doesn't matter at all, obviously, as long as you're finding them useful and enjoyable, and you can join us sometimes. It's always good fun. So yeah, today we're going to be looking, you can see by my hyperspace lightspeed background here, we're going to be looking at Duel the Fates from Star Wars. Only a short section because it would take way too long to mock the whole thing up. This is one of the densest and most brilliantly orchestrated pieces of music in the whole Star Wars canon. And I think as we go through today, you're going to see just how well orchestrated this is. Wonder what kind of music you like to make in winters and autumns. That's a really good question. When I'm sort of making my own music in the winters and autumns, I just kind of doodle a lot. I like to get some patches up and just doodle. And, I'm planning on taking some time around Christmas to actually sit down and write maybe a small EP or something of my own music. Maybe I'll release it. I don't know. I've never really done that before. Maybe I should get around to start doing that. But I do plan to start making 2026. I really want to make more of my own music alongside all the incredible opportunities I get with Audio Imperia and other things as well. But, I sometimes forget to actually just sit down and write my own stuff. And I really should do that. Hi there, Django. I hope you're doing well in the cold weather to keep you inspired. Yes, it is getting quite cold now. And I really like the winters. I don't hike as much as I used to, but for a while I used to hike loads, and it's always really good fun hiking in the winter when it's cold and snowy. We have like some mountains near us, not huge mountains, but they're high enough that, they get a fair bit of ice and snow, certainly in December and January and February. And it's very inspiring as a composer. It's great to go out to those kind of places and just walk around. It does feel a little bit like Lord of the Rings or something, or, Elder Scrolls, something like walking around, Skyrim or something like that. It's pretty cool. It's not quite as dramatic as Skyrim, but it's still very lovely out in the Welsh countryside. And I'm lucky to live not too far away from some really nice scenery. So yeah, I get out as much as I can. And that's the other thing I should do. Two things I should do: get out more next year and write more of my own music next year, just play around with things. I was actually working with Glade the other day, our free library Glade, just like listening to all the presets, because I made some presets, but all the other guys made some presets that are incredible too. And I decided to just go through and like riff on some of them and record a few bits and pieces. And yeah, it's just such a fun thing to do, just to, load up a preset, make some tweaks, write some music. It doesn't have to be the best thing in the world. Just get it out there and, do something with it. So maybe I'm going to record something and release something. Curious to know if you scored any plugins libraries this Black Friday. I did a demo for Glade, and I think that's about it really for the kind of plugins and things. Yeah, so that Glade is the big demo that I've done, and obviously the streams as well. Oh, I started playing our music. That'll come soon. But yeah, Glade was the big one that I did some music for, and we've had some great demos as well. If you haven't checked them out, I did one, but there's a whole bunch of other composers that did them too. And I loved how everybody did something very different with their music and approached it very differently. Really inspiring to see what you could do with Glade. And yeah, I think all of you guys probably know by now because we've been talking about it a lot. But if you don't, it's a free to download library. You can pick it up today. Go on the Audio Imperia website, check it out. There's also, of course, Black Friday sales on at the moment too, so go and have a look at them as well. There's a lot going on. We've been busy over the last few weeks, and you know, there's a lot going on the website, so go check it out. Glade is very inspiring indeed. Oh, do you mean if I bought any? I actually haven't bought any for Black Friday so far. Have I bought anything at all? Any plugins? I don't think I have. I might get something. There's one or two things that I may get. I really should get the FabFilter stuff. I haven't had that for ages, so I really should update and get some of that. I've been thinking about getting maybe Gullfoss. There's a kind of EQ called Gullfoss, which could be interesting. But I'm trying to not so much buy less, because if I want something or need something, I'll definitely get it. And I do still buy things quite regularly, but I'm trying to sort of buy what I need now, you know, and make more use of what I got, which is the great thing about doing these streams, because I get to look at, you know, when I use the Audio Imperia stuff, I'm reminded kind of like how good it is, how much there is there. Using Chorus again today, really inspiring. So yeah, I haven't bought much, but who knows what will happen over the next few weeks. I'm definitely getting all the emails and messages and things coming through, and being tempted by one or two things. Yeah, so, okay, so what we're going to do today is a short section, or two short sections from Duel the Fates. We're going to do the opening, which is chorus only, which should only take us a couple of minutes, because it should really just be pretty much just copy and paste onto these energetic syllables. Then we're going to do a section where we mock up the quite a big section from Duel the Fates in terms of the size of the orchestra. So the whole orchestra is going to be there, but also chorus as well. There's going to be these huge energetic syllables that are going to be driving this piece forward. Cool, so I think we'll get started and we'll see what we have today. Might as well get jumping straight in. And as always, if you have any questions, if you want to chat, I ask these questions because it's nice to get some insights from mature composers like you who value skills over plugins. Yeah, I'm trying not to buy too many plugins on the whole now, mostly because I use more Cue-based stock plugins these days because I actually find them to be really good, also quite fast. I have bought one or two things. In fact, funny enough, I did buy I think it's Brainworks do something called Subsynth, which I bought very cheap. That's the only thing I bought, I think. And we may use a little bit of it today. It just adds a really nice subsynthy kind of layer to, you know, low, whether it's low percussion or low strings or something like that. So we may use a little bit of that today because it adds kind of like a bit of cinematic secret sauce sometimes. Less is definitely more, particularly with a more orchestral piece like this, but it can just add a kind of a cinematic low end that's maybe sometimes missing from pure, you know, low strings or pure low bass elements. But yeah, I would definitely say, you know, it's always good when you get plugins. And if there's a certain plugin that you need, it's always good to get that, whether it's a library, whether it's some kind of EQ or compressor or distortion or some kind of creative effect. But I do try these days to get better at what I've bought, as opposed to just, you know, because I've made that thing of I'll buy that and I'll go and buy that and I'll go and buy that, and then I forget I have some of those libraries. I think trying to make more of what you got is good, but at the same time, you do need libraries, right? And you do need plugins because there are tools. And if you know, the more you have, the more sort of options you'll have as well. So it's a bit of a tricky one, but yeah, in terms of plugins yet, I haven't really dug in. I haven't really done my Black Friday buying, and I don't think I'm going to get loads this year, but if I do get anything, I will let you know, Cosmodium. Cool. Okay, so let's move over to the door. Here we go. Here is our door. You can see we've got two sections, part one, and I haven't actually even labeled this yet. Not that we need to, but I'll just do it now because it will satisfy me to do that. Part two. There we go. Cool. Let me just double check, make sure I'm not missing any important messages. I'm always terrified I'm going to be missing an important message, but I don't think there's anything that important. I'm not important enough to get important messages, but I do sometimes check my phone just in case I'm missing something. Okay, let's have a listen to this first section, and then we'll listen to the second section. First section is going to be pretty recognizable. It's the opening of Duel of the Fates. So when it starts with just the big, huge chorus on its own before the rest of the orchestra joins in, we're going to do that section, and that's only a really short section. Sounds like this. Then we're going to skip to later on in the piece, because as I said, we're not going to be able to mock the whole thing up today. But we're going to skip to here, and I'll show you this section we're going to do here. Kind of sounds messy. This is the incredible thing about John Williams and orchestration in general. That sounds pretty messy. It doesn't sound like it's going to end up representing the piece, but I promise you it will. We might not get 100% of the way there, but we're going to get to a point where suddenly a lot of these things make sense. And I know this is going to work because this is one of those pieces of music that I do have the sheet music for. So this is taken from these deluxe scores. You can pick them up at sheet music stores. I've had these for years. This is the Phantom Menace one. And the great thing about these deluxe scores is that, to my knowledge, they're pretty much from the manuscripts. They're certainly officially licensed. You know, they're not sort of arranged by someone else who's made things up. These are from the John Williams scores, so they are very representative of pretty much the exact thing that happens in these scores and in these pieces. Highly recommend them. You know, study scores in general are really, really good, and there's loads out there. There didn't used to be that many. The John Williams ones were one of the very few, but these days there's whole scores by John Powell and Basil Polidorus and Jerry Goldsmith and you know, all these great composers. So they're really, really useful for picking up and figuring out how these incredible people do their work. And, you know, there's no one better than John Williams. That's a really, really good one. So this has been mocked up from that, went through line by line and worked it all out. When are we doing Final Fantasy VII? Pillow Talk Sounds asks. That's a good question. I'm going to push for it. Because I really love that soundtrack. I think it's a classic. There's so much we could do. We could do One Winged Angel, we could do, you know, Aerith's theme, we could do the intro, we could do the battle theme. There's so many we could do. Incidentally, I mean, as well, we could also do, I would love to do the Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack to Liberi Fatali. That the intro to Final Fantasy VIII has this incredible choral piece as well. Maybe we'll do that at some point. I think a lot of the guys who work on the team haven't played Final Fantasy, certainly haven't played Final Fantasy VII. So they're not aware of the genius of the music and the game. I'm going to try and convince them we need to do Final Fantasy. It's well worth it musically. And of course, there's a lot of people out there that have played it and loved it. And I think it'd bring back a lot of the feels. It does for me. But we should definitely do Final Fantasy at some point, I think. Okay, so we've had a listen. Sounds a bit of a mess at the moment. As we build this up layer by layer, I think it will become more obvious what's happening. But let's start by just moving. So chorus has this whole bunch of different articulations. We got traditional articulations, which are the kind of oohs and the ahs and things like that. They can be legato, they can be sustained as well. Maybe we'll have a look at some of those. We've got these traditional syllables, and then we've got these energetic syllables. So these are basically like the big power, unholy choir style things that you're getting from Duel of the Fates. I can just play anything with these and they sound great. Of course, you can get dynamic range in these, so we can get pretty quiet. I love these patches because they just play themselves. You know, you can do anything with these. Absolutely incredible. Same, got males doing the exact same thing. And same thing again. I love writing this way where one patch can just pretty much get you where you want to go. And I think we can use just these two patches today. Me Too, very early inspiration for me without knowing it until later. 100% the same for Me Too. Massive inspiration for me. In fact, Nobuo Uematsu is probably one of the few people really, really wanted me to get into media scoring. Him, around that sort of mid to late 90s, I was listening to that, obviously John Williams, and then a bit later on, things like Howard Shore, Lord of the Rings. But 96, I think, 97, I think we got a PlayStation, me and my brother, and Final Fantasy VII came bundled with that PlayStation. And I had no idea what it was. Back at the time, literally no idea. Put it on and was like, this has 4 discs. This is back when you had discs, I was like, 4 discs? What game could need 4 discs? And I went on a journey I never expected to go on. And very special. Not sure whether you can relate. When I compose something, I almost always need a story behind the score. So the question is how to find inspiration since I haven't got real projects yet. I 100% know what you mean. It's one of the reasons, going back to what we were saying earlier, why I haven't made as much music or released as much music as I would have liked, because I think very often there's a part of me that can only really work when, number one, there's a deadline, and number two, there's a kind of brief, there's something to work to. I find it very hard when it's just a big blank project and I have no idea what to do. In terms of inspiration these days, I mean, my recommendation would be to either rescore things. You can download things, you can cut scenes for your own personal use, and I would recommend you do that for your own personal use. Or work with people. There are all kinds of things like game jams, and you can get on forums where there are people looking for composers and collaborators. I did a lot of that when I was younger, where you sort of end up building relationships with people, and you might not be working literally professionally, but you're working on stuff that you're passionate about with other passionate people. And a lot of the opportunities I've had in the last 20 years have come from 10, 15, 20, 30, well, maybe not 30 years ago, but 20 to 22 years ago, when I met people when I was 18 or 19 years old, and they were the same. And we all dreamt of being directors and producers and writers and composers and so on and so forth. And then some of those people did go on to get professional jobs in the industry and were very, very, kind in sort of bringing me along for the ride and saying, hey, I've got a little TV project, would you like to come score that? Or I'm doing a small game, would you like to come do that? So those relationships you build in the beginning are really, really important sometimes. And I would definitely recommend that, you work with people and also rescore things as well, as I say, because sometimes you can get really good opportunities from, rescoring things and showing people what you can do with scenes and so on. We also, on our course as well, if you ever did take our Modern Composer Blueprint course, we rescored a short film, a Blender short film, and all the materials are there that you can rescore that film to. So that's a good way of doing it as well. And rescores can go quite a long way. A lot of people have had very successful careers even, on the back of rescoring projects or making epic arrangements of old scores or reinterpreting scores in different ways. And you can get some, kind of notoriety on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and social media in general. And those things can really stand you in good stead. So that's a good way of doing things, I think. And rescore and form networks early on. Find cool people to work with on stuff. And you never know where those things will lead. Most people can usually kind of distill their entire careers down to just a handful of really good contacts that they made from just getting out there and making friends with other creatives and other passionate people. Okay, what I'm going to do is take this choir. I've got these 2 sketches, which is our SA choir, which is basically soprano alto, which are these women's choir, and then the tenors and basses, which are our male choir. And I've separated them out into 2 like this. And if I just bring these down, this should probably, without doing an awful lot, pretty much sound great. I'm going to put these pretty much on full here, like this, because we're going to want these, they start at pretty much full intensity, and they don't really deviate from that too much. Let's just hear. I haven't done any kind of randomization on the quantization or anything here, so this is literally just the piano sketch. Sounds great. Instantly sounds good. We had to turn the males down a little bit because we want it to be female dominant like it is in the original. But that all depends on the kind of music you're making. A few weeks ago, we did a God of War stream, and that was very male dominant. We did have a female choir in there, but we turned them down just to make the males really present. This is the opposite. I think you want the upper end of things. I'm just going to double check. Do we have these reverbed up? I think we probably do. Let's take a little look at what we have going on here. Yeah, so I've got a church reverb going on here. I can show you what that looks like if you guys want. Church reverb is just a great way. If you think about a choir, the origins of a choir is really in the church and religious sphere. You know, that's the origins of music in some ways, or certainly Western music, are these kind of church-based and religious-based musical things, where there'd be a lot of people singing, usually in a big, you know, stone church or something like that, has a beautiful distinctive sound. And so very often choirs are reverbed with a kind of church or a cathedral to give them that epicness. And we've done that here. We can have a little look and see. I think it's this one here, church verb. So I'm using Seventh Heaven. I've got it on this East Church setting, but a 3.5 second delay, and then just dialing that in to taste. Without that, it would sound like this. Bit smaller. Sounds great, but more in your face. And that could be great for certain arrangements, but for the Duel of the Fates, we really want all of that good epicness. And we may do a bit of tweaking on that as we go, but for now, that's a good start, I think. Okay. Pillar Talk says, I'm working a publishing contract right now for a pretty big trailer house, and they have all of their composers start their tracks with rescores of other trailers. There is a ton of value in rescores. 100%. These days, a lot of people, like I said, they really do start their careers by rescoring. I know a lot of people have done very well doing quote unquote epic versions of things. You know, so that can be really useful as well. 100%. I mean, it's the easiest way for people to see, in some ways, your quality, because if they know what you're rescoring, if you're rescoring Star Wars or you're rescoring Final Fantasy or whatever it might be, and your music is working for that stuff, that's an instant badge of quality in a way, right? If someone just hears your music, even if it's really good, they're going to have that same feeling of like, you know, this is cool, but like, what's it for? What would it be used in? If someone's watching your music for a trailer or for a scene from a film and they're loving it, they're saying this is really exciting or really dramatic or emotional, that's an instant badge of quality. And in a world where, you know, the sort of social media aspect of things is so important, gaining attention that way can be a really good way. And you never know who's watching. There could be a really talented filmmaker or game director or someone like that who takes a listen to what you've done and likes how you're, you know, working and likes how you're rescoring things and says, hey, I'm working on something. Would you like to come and you know, work with me? Or would you like to come and pitch for it or whatever it might be? But that's how opportunities get underway these days. So I agree 100%. It's a great way of working. And yeah, I think a lot of trailer houses these days are finding their talent from, you know, whether it's social media or so on, or submissions, but those submissions may take the form of rescores or, you know, recreated stuff. So it's a really good way of going. Okay, so we kind of done our first part. That was pretty quick and easy, but I think that sounds great. We might come back and do a bit of tweaking, but I want to get on to the next part, which I think will be a bit more fun and sort of show chorus in more context. But you can hear chorus completely naked, so to speak, just on its own. Sounds incredible. So it's a really good question we've been asked by Fedor. Is it possible to change the lyrics? It's possible to change the syllables. Yes, these are automated. So you can see, I'm just going to keep it like this today and automate them. But you can create presets. You can create switches so that you can, you know, use them in different ways. You can use, see, for example, I put the key switch on here. So each one of these could change to a different syllable, and then I could customize the syllables. I'm not going to go that in depth today, but just so you guys do know, yes, if you really want to choose which syllables for which sections or have everything be very consistent, you can do that for sure. It's very easy inside the Pyramid engine. And you've also got this great release control here. So this is S's and non-S's. So if you, sometimes you might want a syllable to end with a S, you know, it might be a farce or meefs or whatever it might be. Sometimes you don't want that S because it might spoil the mood, or it might just not be the sound that you want. And you can use velocity to trigger at what point the S is triggered or not triggered. You can also use CC as well if you prefer working that way. So I'm not going to use the syllables today just because it would take too much time to program for a 2-hour stream. But just so you know, you can absolutely do that. There's a ton of options in here. There'll be a walkthrough in Chorus that will explain it in a bit more detail, but it's really intuitive. You can pick and choose which syllables for which key switches, and then you can see if I'm doing this, I'm choosing the key switches. And I could do it that way for each individual sound. I could choose the key switch. If you just want to go random, if you just want the vibe, every time I play something different, you get a different syllable. And for a lot of purposes, that's good. If you just want the choir to just be there, providing a kind of vibe and an emotional feel, then you can do it that way. If you really want to dig in deep and get the choir sounding and performing in a way that works for you, you can absolutely do that too. So it's a very, very versatile choir. And you can do this for the traditional syllables as well if you want to. So we're going to keep to just keeping these vibe today. It's more about the vibe than detail, but 100% you can go very detailed on this if you want to. Cool. That will do us for now, and then we will move on. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to copy this down here. This is all of our female vocals for the rest of it, or choral part. And then I'm going to copy this down here. And these are our males. And this should pretty much just work the way we want it to. We'll have a listen in isolation. First, I've now muted these. Something you'll always have to help me with today as well. I still haven't changed this template to have all my sample start times be a -125 the way they should be. If anything's sounding out of time or you notice I don't change it, feel free to remind me in the chat. It's just me being useless and not changing my template. So as we go through and add new instruments, we may need to change some of those, but we'll see how it goes. Axel saying, hear me out, guys. What if Steve Jablonski wrote Gladiator? Very good suggestion. Yes, this is in reference to our videos. We're doing this whole series of What If, where me and Tom are taking two composers and usually a well-known theme, and we're redoing that theme. Talking about rescoring, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're rescoring those themes kind of in the styles of other composers. So we're just having fun. We're not taking it too seriously, but we're just having fun imagining what if Hans did Lord of the Rings, or what if John Williams did the Avengers. We did one of those too. And we're just having fun thinking, what's the style and what do these composers do when they're writing, and can we sort of aim to incorporate some of their style into these themes and rework them in a way that sounds more like that composer. And we're asking for for ideas on who we should do. We've had hundreds of ideas, some incredible ones. So thank you very much, Axox. That's a really good one. Steve Jablonski for Gladiator. I could imagine it. I would have fun doing that. And if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments of those videos, or here, if you want to put it in the chat. We're listening to everybody. We're loving it. We're having such good fun. There will be plenty more to come. I think we're going to have no shortage of composers and cues and themes. So that's going to be great fun. Okay, let's just mute all of these and have a listen to our choir in isolation. We've done no programming whatsoever. So this is literally kind of out of the box, just with our modulation at the top. We're just going absolutely 100% here. Works for me. And I think as we get the rest of the orchestration around it, it's going to help bed it in and make it sound even more realistic. And again, we could, if we wanted to go in deep, we could go and make sure that all of these syllables were identical or were consistent. We could definitely do that. We're not going to do it today, but just so you guys know, that's 100% something you could do. And if I had more time, I'd go in there and figure out the best syllables for the job and change them all on the key switches. But today we're just going to sort of have fun. That already sounds pretty good to me. I'd rather do something a little more experimental. Johnny Greenwood to Star Wars. Hey, that would be, I would be very much up for that. And we do definitely experimental or things that are out of left field. We want to do more of them as well. We've got a few ideas there that I think are going to be a lot of fun. Some composers who might be not what you'd expect, doing themes that they, might not be obvious candidates for, but actually I think we'll do incredible versions of those themes. So we have a few of those. And I think, Johnny, I don't know what Johnny Greenwood would do for Star Wars, but I would want to find out. Paul Thomas Anderson, Johnny Greenwood, Star Wars. Let's make it happen. I would watch that all day. Okay, so choir sounding good. We may work at it as we go, but this is the power of chorus. Pretty much one patch or two patches here, two energetic syllables out of the box. No modulation changes. We haven't done any randomization or humanization. We've kind of just plonk this in and press play, and it's maybe not 100% of the way there, but it already sounds pretty good and has that energy, which is the most important part of the choir here. Sounds great. Another big thing here, of course, it's John Williams. So the other reason why this sounds so good is because of the immaculate orchestration, the way in which he's layered these choirs and you know, stacked the voicings to make them sound absolutely perfect. There's these small details in the choirs, you know, parts where they merge, parts where 3 voices become 2 or 2 voices become 3. Just give you a little example of that in this very first opening here. So if I take the female choir, you can see we start off with 2 voices, and then at the second part we get 3 voices. So on their own, they sound like this. 3 voices now. And then the males, kind of the opposite really, starting with the 3 or mostly with the 3 and then moving more to 2 voices. Just brilliant orchestration, a way of understanding what registers are going to work best, you know, and how the voicing is going to be distributed. Sounds a bit weird on its own. But layered together, they work. They just complement each other perfectly. And the movement of these voices is what gives it so much power and clarity. You can see that, broadly speaking, what John Williams is doing here is he's using more of these kinds of fourths and fifths, which are these. So less of these thirds and seconds and more of the fourths and fifths. Lower down. This is, we talked about it before, where kind of lower down you maybe want more power and more of these bigger, sort of wider voicings, and then higher up you can get a little bit more close voicings like these as well. And you can change them around as well, but it's just immaculate orchestration. Nothing less you'd expect from John Williams, right? Good morning all. Wow, came into with some big choir energy. Yes, we're going big today. We're definitely starting the morning off with a bang, if it's morning for you. Hats off, you guys at Audio Imperia, taking the time to educate people on the craft. Thank you very much, Axel. We love doing it. This is we love geeking out about music and sample libraries and what you can do with them. And we're just thankful every day that some other people also love geeking out with us. It's a pleasure. Hey, Ollie's with us. Ollie works for Audio Imperia. He's with us. He'll be hanging out with us. Some of the other guys may drop in as well. Okay, let's get these low strings going. And I think I'm going to use Dolce and maybe a combination of Dolce and Array to do this. Dolce is going to give us some of that lovely kind of room energy that we're going to need. Duel the Fates, recorded at Abbey Road, if you ever seen it being recorded. One orchestra, one room with the choir at the back of the room. It's a really organic, natural, big, wide-sounding piece of music. And that comes from just an orchestra in a room. You know, you can't fake that kind of thing. So we're not looking for immaculate sort of production like modern day where everything's stemmed out and recorded separately. We're going for vibe. We're going for big sounds. We're going for orchestra in a room. And Dolce has that vibe perfectly. It's all about vibes. So that's what we're going to go for. Let's get some shorts going on. Let's get these Dolce bass spiccatos. Open them up. Some of these may take a little second to load. Adam, do you want to use the syllable builder to get the Kes sound? Yes, we should come back and do that soon. We should definitely use the syllable builder, maybe just in the beginning. Let me close that down. I can just show you guys very quickly how it works. So we got this going on. Oh, that's our Dolce spiccato. That's not what we want. But just so you guys can see in action how this works, we can take this and find our Kes sound. So we can go through. There's Ke, you can see here. So it's going to be on that key switch there. And I can just make that first one there like that. And I can do the same thing with the females too. So we can come in here, make sure we got that on there. And then make sure that we've got that connected to the right one too. Is that going to work? There we go. There we go. Make sure we got that on the right key switch there. And so that's going to trigger those key switches. And we could go through the whole thing and do that. So maybe what we'll do is come back and just do this section and make sure that we got it sounding as good as possible. I'll dig out the lyrics from the book and we'll figure out the best syllables for those lyrics. But you can see already we're triggering that first thing. Sounding good. Okay, let's go on and do some of this too. And then we'll come back to this quiet and keep refining as we go. This shouldn't take too long because most of it's going to be kind of there. Okay. We obviously just want the lowest voices from all of this. So we're just going to want all of this here. This is what the... Sounds a bit weird, right? But this is what the basses are doing. And what we'll probably do is just sort of gain, if any of this is a bit quiet or anything, let me know. We'll gain things up as we go, but we're going to maybe just get a gain on there and get a little bit more volume from that. It's probably a little bit quiet. Bring it up by 10 and then we'll see. Cool. Sounds huge. This is why Dolce is going to work really well for this. What I'm going to do is add a bit of random velocity, which I have set up here. Random velocity, there we go. And bring them down just a tiny bit. We don't want them too loud. We'll see as we go. So if I play that with the choir, we're going to build up bit by bit. Now we'll probably have to figure out that part there. That's probably going to be a little bit quieter because we're higher up in the register now, right? So we don't want that to be... So you can hear this is, you might not notice this when you listen to the original piece because the basses are kind of not necessarily quiet, but they're so sort of naturally bedded into the rest of the room that you don't often hear that they're really driving with these constant 16th notes. This is pretty much exactly what they're doing. And then we have the exact same thing going on in the cello, but an octave higher. So we're going to put them in as well. Let's find our cellos. Dolce, we'll use Dolce again. We may layer these with Array just to sort of give them a little bit more clarity if we feel we need it, but only if we feel we need it. For the basses and low strings, probably not, because they're not really the focus of this piece, you know, in the same way they're just driving away constantly in the background. So we have this. Nice. We're going to get some trumpets in, and again, we're probably going to do some layering with the trumpets. So let's have a listen to these. So we're just missing a note there. I think I've deleted it. There it is. Such cool stuff. And then with the choir, let's keep going back to this choir because that's what we really want to focus on today. It's just how each of these elements builds around the choir to support the choir. And everything's going to be quieter than the choir. Some stuff choir's just in the background, you can barely hear it, it's just providing a layer. Not this. This is a choral piece with the orchestra as accompaniment, and we're going to be keeping that true to that as we go through. Cool stuff. We will fix things up as we go. We're just sort of getting everything in for now. So maybe get the rest of those strings in and then we'll move on to the brass because the strings are very cool. Okay, it's all pretty much short strings. There are a few places where we may use something different. Let's go to our first violin spiccato and let's get those in. These may be things that we're more likely to layer with Array, but we'll see. We might not have to again because the chorus, the choral elements are the focus here. We don't have to be quite as detailed with the orchestra. So again, as long as the vibe. For me, it's always vibe. It's like if the vibe is right, then we can get away with a few inconsistencies or a few issues if we really need to. So, okay, let's take a little listen to this now and see what we've got. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to randomize some of that stuff. And what we're going to do is we want, because these are the first violins, we want the upper parts where they split. We want the upper parts. So here, upper stuff. It's only going to be upper stuff here, upper stuff as well. And then when we get to the second violins, we'll do the opposite. So same there. With the runs, we'll come to them and see if we can fix them up a bit. We won't worry about them too much now. Waiting for the huge Duel the Face trumpets. I think we said about that. We're definitely going to put them in. Okay, so I'm going to just take these out. Actually, no, I'm going to leave them in for now, and we're going to make them loud. We may end up using a different articulation for these, but we'll see. And we're going to want that to be a little bit quieter. Any plan of brass equivalent to array or light? Well, we recently released Poseidon, which is not quite the same, but that is a pretty... We're going to use Poseidon today. So as a future, obviously can't say exactly what we're working on, but if and when there is something new to announce, you guys will be the first to know. And we do listen to what you guys want and would like to see. We've got a lot of exciting stuff kind of that we're working on for various different aspects. Obviously, we just recently did Glade, which is one of the big projects we were working on, which is free. It doesn't have any brass, but has some incredible woodwind and strings and a lot of other instruments too. But we do listen to everything that you guys are talking about in terms of what you'd like to see. So it's just going to be a case of watch this space, I'm afraid. Sound a bit weird for now, but don't worry. As we get through fixing all this, it will sound better. Randomized velocity for the sake of time is that regular practice. There's a logic to how players accent the rhythms. There is. And again, it's going to be one of those things where as we fix things up, if certain accents are just wrong or don't work, we'll go in and fix them one by one if we really don't like the way something's coming through. But what I'm going to do is just give a bit of randomization to this so we don't have everything playing exactly the same. And then if we get towards the end and we're like, something isn't shaped right, we can go in and pick out certain notes. Because you're 100% right. You know, players wouldn't just play completely randomly. They're going to hit certain notes. There's going to be certain accents, certain beats that we'll want to hit more. But we're going to see sort of where we're at with that stuff in terms of we're not going to worry too much about it unless it doesn't sound right. And we're not going to get it 100% perfect, but, you know, we can get it pretty good, hopefully. But it's a really good point. Yes, I'm just doing a bit of randomization for the sake of not having everything uniform. If we had more time, I would definitely either play this in or, you know, spend a lot more time sort of ironing everything out. But this is such a big piece. We're going to just sort of check everything in and then see where we're at. And yeah, no problem. No, it's a great observation. Because yes, I definitely don't want to give you guys the idea that you just randomize everything and it's done. That's not true. But for now, this might be fine, especially because, again, we're focusing on this choir. So. Nice. Starting to come together. And I may just layer that with array. So we got array core. Because that top line, we probably do just want a bit more definition. We don't need it for everything. Again, if I had all the time, maybe I would. But we don't need it for everything. But I think for that top line, a little bit more definition will work. And these actually do have our delay, the right delay. This one doesn't. So we will be moving that. I think I've mentioned already, but some of these might not have the right delay today. We need to go back in and fix them. We'll choose our spiccato fast and we shall just copy that up and that should kind of work now. And then we'll just... Really interesting writing. Lots of very frenetic up and down the octave. Sounds a bit weird, but when you hear it with the trumpets, you'll see what's going on. Really interesting stuff. So you can see it's adding a bit of definition. And for that top line, just the top line, I think we want a bit of definition. What I'm actually going to do is take some of the mid out and really just focus on the top. Don't really need that. That's what I want. That little fizz at the top there. And then just blend that into taste. Just a little goes a long way there, but that's going to help, I think. And that at the top there, we're really going to want to sort of swell into that with the rest of the orchestration, I think it's going to be fine. But yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Sounding pretty good. Let's do our second violins. And I think that's just going to be dolce. Doesn't really have to be as detailed, but they're definitely in there. So what I'm going to do is take our high strings again, copy them up there, paste them in, and then we'll find the lower lines, because it's all the lower lines of this. Sometimes there's unison, which is why it's great using these first and second violins. Then sometimes they split out. It's really detailed orchestration here, which we probably won't have time to go into everything today, but we're going to look at some of the highlights here because it's just so well written, as you'd expect for John Williams. And then we're going to want all that stuff there. We're going to do the same thing, a bit of randomization, and then we'll come back in and we'll look at sort of what we need to do if we need to really fix anything up for the mix. There we go. And I'm just going to make them not too random, so more like that, but we definitely want them in the upper end. Same thing, we're going to fix these up, but those little sections there, we don't want it to be quite, there's definite triplets there, but if you listen to it, it sounds more like a, it's not as strong as that, so we want to just bring them down, and we'll maybe fix them up. I can show you what we'll do. That's a bit better. Nice, that will work for us, I think, for that. Okay. So Peter's with us. Hey, Peter. The choir is definitely pouncing. Yes, it's definitely punching through. Choir's a bit loud. Yeah, you're probably right, guys. We'll definitely do some mixing as we go. In fact, let's just go in and take it down a little bit here. So let's go have a listen back. That'll do for now, because we want to kind of focus on the choir until we have everything in, then we'll balance it all out. But I agree. We don't want it to be absolutely the only thing you can hear. What I'm going to do there is I'm going to bring in the Mockup patches. I'm just going to use this violin 2 Mockup patch. A bit weird, but I'm going to load this one up because I don't actually think I have the violins one loaded. That's fine. This is just going to add a little bit more emphasis to this section here. So we have shorts here, you can hear. And I like it, but what I think we need to do is just add a little bit more just phrasing, basically. So we're going to layer. These will sound slightly different. They're going to sound just slightly more elongated, and I think that's going to just add a bit of phrasing, even a little bit more there. Hey, Peter says, I'm doing some catalog and your Mission Impossible custom is one of the refs. Well, that's good to hear. I'm going to be interested to see what you do that references it. That will be very cool. Okay, starting to sound pretty decent. And yeah, that's pretty much all the strings. We do have violas, which are also going to be shorts. I think they're shorts pretty much the whole way through. They're doing an interesting, as you might expect, kind of like a mid-range thing that you're going to see. Kind of interesting, just filling out the kind of harmony of these low strings. So we'll actually play them in isolation when we come to it. It's this stuff up here. So I'm going to take all this out. It's none of that. It's all this stuff. And then we're just going to bring them up here at the end. For this section here, we actually don't want them to be too, because they're filling out the sort of mid frequencies. We don't want them to be as powerful as the rest of it, I don't think. Again, we'll do a bit of randomization here. There we go. Bring that down a tiny bit. And again, we'll work on phrasing if we need to. Dart shape sounds so good. I think it's pretty good life there. I'm also going to do a little bit of randomization just on these, just to make them not too uniform. There we go. So you can hear now, if I just bring the low strings in, they're filling out up there. Let's just double check. I think the lows are dragging. They shouldn't be dragging, but we can check. No, we've got the right things. We can tighten them up if we need to. That's going to be easy enough. What we may need to do is use envelope just to bring them a little bit tighter, but we'll worry about that as we go through. And then we do just need to fix those up a bit more. I'm going to bring them down a little bit more. Cool. Okay. Actually bring those basses down a tiny bit. So very frenetic stuff. Cool. Just save that, have a little sip of tea, and then we should carry on. And as I said, as we work our way through this, we're going to just sort of make sure that it programs a little bit better if we need to here and there, but we're just going to check it all in for now. Go, we're nearly an hour through. Okay, so let's think about what we can do next. We have these trumpet shorts. Now, we'll have to layer these with a few libraries. We're going to have a little look. We've got fluid brass, which we could have a little look at and see what we think of those. They might work. Or we could maybe layer them up with Jaeger if we just want a little bit more definition to it. Let me just make sure we got 100 millisecond start delay there. So I'm going to just add that in. Yeah, I think they're a little bit flubby for what we need, but it's a good shout. Yeah, I think we definitely need to sort of maybe tighten them up a bit so they just fit a bit better in the overall thing. Okay, let's copy this in and have a little listen to what we have going on here. Okay. We do want to make the phrasing a bit better on these. We don't want to be too sort of random with these, but let's just have a little listen. I'm also going to put these on Jaeger as well. There we go. We've got the Jaeger 3 trumpets. This may require a bit of layering to really get this to work, because we kind of have a very specific purpose that we need these to fulfill. So we shall see if we can get this going. These are just going to be staccatissimo, so I might tighten these up with the envelope as well if we need to. There we go. Just make them those. Have a listen to this on these as well. Put them in our brass there. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we can get a bit of envelope on those Jaeger trumpets. See, I like the quicker attack of these. Or not attack, but quicker release in a way, like the kind of way they're a bit more, just a bit tighter and sharper. The fluid brassy ones sound incredible. They sound really good and they're great for fast passages, but there we go. See, we're layering here. So we're getting sort of the nice room and tone and feel of those fluid brass. What I'm also going to do here is just come and really shorten these and then add a little bit of time randomness just to make them not too perfect. And I'll copy them back down there. We'll see what we've got. Nice. And I'm even going to maybe use a bit of transient design on these. Don't want to go too crazy and sort of ruin the the natural room sound of them, but just what I can do to get everything to be a bit tighter. Because the way these brass are played is like unbelievably sort of just blatty and tight and just sticking out here and there. Cool, let's see how that sounds in isolation, or rather with the rest of the stuff. Yeah, we're really going to have to massage these as we go, because there's sort of notes that stick out and certain notes that don't stick out. So it's like those ones there. The higher ones are really the ones we want, so... The other one's a bit buried in the actual piece. It's those big ones we want. And then same, we just want a little bit more. Cool. And these are really into playing with those high strings. Now these kind of frenetic high strings make sense because they rise with the trumpets and then fall. And same, we want those to be not too uniform. That's a bit more like it. I'm going to just dirty these up with a little bit of saturation, not distortion like guitar distortion, saturation. It's just going to sort of darken them and make them a little bit more. See how they're... Okay, we're starting to get some with these, I think. They can be pretty quiet. We don't really hear those. We just hear them. Yeah, and same. We're going to want to bring them down. Cool. And we can really just bring them off there. Nice. They really just tail off there, because I guess the players are almost waiting to jump up to this high note, so they're sort of coming off a little bit early. Yeah, that sounds a little bit more realistic. And same, we don't want them to be quite so sticking out. They're not quite as sort of loud as that. It's actually those, I think. Cool, that will do for now. We'll keep working. Nice, and then I'm gonna add a little bit more reverb to these. Okay, coming together. They're really pretty quiet in the original, those ones. Let's have a little listen to what we have. I think we're getting somewhere. We'll move on to the low brass. Starting to get some with those. We want those trumpets like just poking out, but we don't want them to be, again, this is all like an orchestra in a room, so we don't want them to sound like they're right up close or anything like that, or that they're deliberately artificially kind of boosted in the mix. They just pick out at these sort of major notes here and there. We might also use, might just see if we're going to go full layer here. See what we get if we use a little bit of Poseidon in there as well. We're going to use a bit of Poseidon today. Ooh, already had that activated. I love the sound of Poseidon. The room is just incredible. So lively and so beautiful. So let's just use those and see what we get. Again, this will be a layer. This is going to be a careful layering of all these. Might help if we select the right articulation, which I don't think we have. They sound great. One thing I do want to do is make sure we got our sample start time so everything's lining up. Yeah, that sounds a bit better to me. Nice, and we can even maybe get rid of them. I won't get too fixated on these, but just want to make sure we... I don't think we need all the libraries to be playing that little section. Yeah, we'll keep that one, but we'll keep it sort of low in the mix. Pretty quiet. That's a bit better. We'll keep working. Cool. Next thing we need to do is get the horns in. There's a big horn melody in this. Cool. So let's use Jaeger. We haven't used Jaeger yet. Very, very similar to the Nucleus, but we'll just use Jaeger. Why not? And then we'll maybe layer these with the Poseidon horns too. We'll see how it all sounds. So these are our horns here. I've got trumpets horns here. I don't think that's what I meant. I think I just meant horns. Although the trumpets do also, the third trumpet doubles the horns, which we'll probably end up doing as well. Great. Cool. It's going to sound good, I think. And then we're obviously just going to want to overlap all of them. Nice. That sounds really good. Make sure that we've got our sample delay time here, which is right. So that should now fit. Nice. And then we also do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate this trumpet part here. The third, this is a very common John Williams technique, is using the third trumpet. There's usually three trumpets, 3 or 4, and the third trumpet or the fourth trumpet, if it's in 4s, will sometimes double what the horns are doing to give the horns a little bit more bite, but without dominating the trumpet. So we're going to sort of simulate that. Well, that's actually what happens in the orchestration for most of this. So certainly these sections here. So I'm just going to play that. I'm going to make sure we label that right so we know what we're doing. Legato. Are we on the right one here? No, there we go. Listen how these lift the horns without dominating with the trumpet sound. See, we still get the horn sound, but the third trumpet just adds a little bit of that trumpet high end and fizz. Really, really great orchestration technique. Without the horns, just lose a bit of definition. With, they still sound like horns, but they've got a kind of lift to them. This is exactly what John Williams does. He does this a lot all over Star Wars. This kind of doubling sounds great. So. And then we'll worry about the rest of it as we go. They're going to be different articulations. So I'm just going to mute them for now. We'll come back to them in a moment. Cool. And all together, this is starting to sound like something. We just need to get legatos on them as well, so we get a nice trigger. I'm probably going to layer these with Poseidon. You'll see why I think Poseidon's got such a great room tone, and it's going to sound really good. So Poseidon, we got these beautiful 2 horns in Poseidon, just going to use the sustain patch because Poseidon's focused more on wave motions and textures than sort of standard brass articulations, but it does have a load of brass articulations, including this really beautiful sustain, which I think is going to work just to double what we've got going on here. So let's have a little listen. I'm going to very quickly delete any overlaps here because we're not going to want them. There we go. Nice, and we're obviously going to get right up in that top register here. Cool. And then we're just going to make sure that they're actually at the right level. The 10 or so. Nice, and we're just going to add with everything else, and that should sound pretty powerful now. We're just adding a bit of that room. So we may even add Talos in there. You know, we may even just add Talos. I mean, it's not completely realistic, but that's okay. So I think I've got Talos here. But we just want those horns. We don't want the low brass. Sort of larger than life in a way, but not too much so. So we'll just see what it sounds like with Talos, but kind of layered in. We don't want this to be the focus, but I think it's going to add a kind of beefiness that we're maybe still missing. Make sure we got that there, and also make sure that we've got our sample start delay for all of these things. Same here. These should be minus 125, I think. Let me just double check that's true. Hey, Tom. Thanks for joining us. Tom's with us. Tom, who I do the Compose Challenges with and does a whole bunch of stuff for Audio Imperia. So if you have any questions for Tom, ask them. To Tom, he's here now. He did an incredible Glade demo. Speaking of Glade demos, I really love Tom's, and Tom's is in the trailer. Sounded incredible. So he's the guy to talk to for Glade stuff. Okay, let's have a little listen to these Talos horns. Yeah, we got this beautiful big sound with Talos. Same thing here, though. We're going to boost this a bit, and then we can just bring it down in the mix if we need to. Chorus is truly a beast. Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's my go-to. Pretty rare that I have to use anything else these days. Now and again, but you know, it's not very often. So nice. See how much that's adding, that Talos, when I take it out. Oh, and I'm just going to put that back. Adds like a warmth. Talos has this beautiful mid-range sound to it that sometimes can be a bit much, but sometimes isn't. You know, you can always EQ it out if you don't need it, but when it hits, it hits. Nothing cuts through like Talos. Has this beautiful regal sound, and in fact, I might just go in and add a little bit more reverb to these as well. Don't want to drain everything in reverb, but everything is further back in the hall, and we're trying to simulate that somehow. That's a little bit better, I think. Okay. Cool. And we can dial some of this back. And they should just cut through a bit more now. Nice. Yeah, we're getting some with that, I think. Just extend those notes out a little bit, tail off a bit, but we'll worry about sort of programming and final details towards the end. Nice. Now we need some of that low brass. There's low brass in here. It's pretty much copying what the low strings are doing. And I think I'm going to use Poseidon because there's something about the room of Poseidon that really works for this kind of music. And Poseidon's got some really nice shorts in there as well. So the trombones are pretty much just doing a combination of the violas and the celli. So that's all we're really going to do is copy them over and then just sort of finesse them as we need. It's not quite as perfectly orchestrated as the original, but that's fine because we're looking again more for vibe here. And this is pretty much what they do. This is almost exactly what they do. There's just a little bit of finesse to it. But we don't need to worry about that because we're working different workflow. We're not actually working with an orchestra here. Okay, we obviously want to choose nice. And we're going to bring them down a little bit because they're not going to be playing quite at that level. they don't do that part. You wouldn't, well, you could get trombones doing that, but it wouldn't be easy. So all of that stuff here we don't need. In fact, I'll just delete this. Excuse me. Oh, pressing the wrong buttons here. Can take a drink of tea so I don't lose my voice. Here we go. And then we'll change as we go through. They change something slightly different. Cool. Okay. Let's have a little listen to what we've got there. Just fills out that brass arrangement so that there's no gaps really in any of the, you know, the woodwinds or the strings or the brass. And I really love the sound of Poseidon here. God, don't score on my voice here, guys. Sorry. Okay. Tom asks a really good question. He also mentioned Talos, which I totally agree. Very, very agile, very beautiful lyrical lines you can get with Talos. But yes, what's up you live from transcribing and mocking up so much John Williams this year? It's a really good question. Because this is what I always learn about John Williams. I do pretty much what I've done here. I get the piano and I listen to it and I'm like, what? Like, is this actually right? I go back and I check the sheet music and I'm like, really? Is that what the bassoons do? Is that what the double bass does? It doesn't seem right. It doesn't work. Sounds a bit clunky. I'm pretty sure that might be wrong. And then as I go through and layer it up bit by bit, kind of what we're doing today, lines that on their own don't seem to make sense or don't seem to have an obvious logic. As you build up line by line, you're just like, it's so well thought out. Everything's really well thought out. You know, there are so many, I mean, like you said, even these repetitive sections, like the basses here, look at these small differences, these small, it's not just copy, paste, even quote unquote copy, paste parts we have this, but then we go something different. Then we have a combination of the two. Little repetition, then something different. The main riff, but in the basses. Then we go to this. Back to this again, something different. It's just so well put together. So that's what I've learned is like orchestration is the biggest thing. If you're a good orchestrator and you orchestrate right, we've done very little programming. And this is not the best sounding mock-up in the world, but because it's so well orchestrated, it's pretty much coming together out of the box and we're not having to do a ton of stuff here. Contrapunct motor in there was probably saying, yes, we definitely need to get the bassoons in there. There are plenty of woodwinds in this and we're going to get them in. Cool. We'll do the rest of that brass in a minute. I agree, contrabass is saying good. We also need to get the low brass. They're actually tubas. We don't really have sort of low brass like chimbassi and stuff like that in this piece of music. But the tubas are pretty much doing what the double basses are doing. Again, they do something slightly different. We may not get around to completely finessing them so they're perfect, but that's okay. As long as we get them roughly doing what they do in the piece. Because these are more of a background. And these are pretty loud. Low elements are so important here. You know, we got the bass really is our bass here. That's our, but see how that adds this kind of upper frequency without the bass loses some aggression. And then when we add the woods, as Michael said, it just adds even more. It adds this kind of mid-range weight and power. Nice. Okay, so that's pretty much our low, well, our brass done, really. I mean, we will finesse it, but... And then we just have this stuff going on in the trombones here. Nice. Cool. Cool. We want to bring them down a tiny bit here because they're so high, they're poking through a bit much, which is fine, but we don't want them to be quite as loud as that. Generally speaking, as violins get higher, they actually lose volume, and sometimes you need to manipulate sample library slightly to sort of get that feeling. They actually don't get louder. You think as they get higher up, they get louder and louder and louder and bigger. It's often not the way, so we're sort of emulating. Just help them sort of bed in a bit better. Nice. And of course, what we have going on here is this that we're missing. Let me just double check. Oh, no. No, we need to do this, of course. So this is a really interesting section here. I'm going to do it maybe on Poseidon. I think it's going to work on Poseidon. Maybe we'll have to kind of do 2 or 3 things. So we got Poseidon trumpets here. I'm going to double that. I'm going to turn this into a sustain patch. Should load up in a second. Really interesting counter rhythm stuff going on in the trumpets at this point, which is just beautifully written here. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to take it down here. I'm going to see how this works in a combination of maybe Jaeger and Poseidon, and this is going to have to be sustained. And make sure that we're on that sustain so that we actually trigger it. Yeah, cool. And then we'll move those over. There's this great sort of long held stuff going on in the trumpets, and we're going to need to almost certainly double that with probably Jaeger, I think, at this point, to get some of the power of Jaeger with some of that kind of beauty and room of Poseidon. But together, I think they're going to work really well here. Maybe Sussex, maybe Portato. We got some really nice Portatos in here as well, but let's just see. Where are we here? Might help if I... Yeah, I might use the Portatos then. Let's have a little listen. And then, of course, those little sections there will be the shorts again. And we'll sort of blend them in as we go. Just move that up there. I'm also going to want that on our Poseidon there. And just cut that out of there. And then we'll just sort of make sure they work. We obviously have those. Nice. We don't want them to be quite so sort of loud and prominent. It's more like that. Again, they're just sort of little articulations. That's a bit better. But have a listen to this, how this works with the choir. I'll just put the brass and the choir on because it's such a beautiful sort of change. Just such wonderful writing, you know, this kind of the way that everything's always changing. You know, all these instruments have 4 or 5 functions just in this one piece. So the trumpets have gone from these really short, you know, staccatissimo phrases. Just really, really great writing. And we want to make them a little bit more clipped. Really just sort of, there we go. But in the context of the whole piece, you don't really hear them really loud, but they just provide this different rhythmic motion at this point. Just so cleverly done. Okay, let's just sort of get the rest of that kind of working. There we go. And then we'll bring that down there as well. Cut that out. And then we're just going to sort of clip these a little bit as well. Make sure they're not running on too long. And then we'll sort of just bring them down slightly. I think we'll focus more on the Jaeger stuff here. Yeah, it's so cool. The horns definitely play a part in this, and we're going to see what they do in a second. They're pretty much doubling the choir, but you're right, 100% the horns are not just going to drop out. Nothing drops out really here. So let's put the horns in, because you're absolutely right. And we're probably going to use a combination of sustained and maybe staccato here. Let's you know, again, if we had hours, we definitely do a lot of programming on this, but we don't. But we can get this sort of somewhere it needs to be. You know, we can get it sounding decent, again, because genius John Williams is just so... These are actually staccatos, so not staccatissimo. But, you know, his writing's so good that I don't need to do an awful lot to get it sounding decent. It's not going to sound perfect, but it can sound decent. So here's the horns. I've called them trumpet horns, but this is what they do. They just basically follow the choir. Let me just take that there. Let's just take a little look. The sustains here. Cool. What have we got here? Yeah, try the sustains along with these legatos. Constantino's asking about, I'm a huge fan of Audio Imperia, thank you very much. I have 95% of the products today and also bought Chorus, great. Hope you're enjoying it. One of the questions, do you have any info of new products? So I don't have anything to announce today, and I can't really say too much about what's coming up. There's always stuff in the pipeline, so there will be things in the future, and all I will say is watch this space on that, because we're always trying to, you know, get the next thing going. But as to when things come out and what they are, I have the Audio Imperia snipers preventing me from saying anything. Not really. It's just that we can't announce stuff until it's kind of ready, you know, because you never know how things are going to pan out. So the only thing I can say is, yes, of course, there's always going to be new stuff, but what it is and exactly when it's here, won't be able to say. But thank you very much for supporting us, for buying the products. And as I say, there will be other stuff coming up. So do watch this space, sign up to the mailing list if you haven't, or get on our YouTube. Whenever there's something new released, we will tell you, and we will usually do a stream or some kind of special event about it too. So you will definitely not sort of miss out when something new comes out. Okay, let's make sure we got these right here. Why am I not getting any? Oh, that would be why. That's way too high. So let's just see. There we go. Okay, let's make sure that we've got all our track delays and things. Marvel level secrecy. Yeah, that's how it is. Well, it's mostly just because I suppose we're always working on stuff, and until it's kind of ready to show, you know, we could say, oh, we're doing this and that, but, you know, until it's sort of there and ready, it's always a bit disingenuous. So I think we just like to make sure we're good to go and then spring something really great on you guys. Yeah, I don't think we need those. I thought it might work well, but it's actually just... Okay. And I think they can be staccatissimo. Really want these to be tight. That's better. And I'm going to put them on Poseidon as well. Because I love the room of Poseidon. That's going to give us a bit more of that bloom that we want, and help to almost like compress them into the mix a bit more. I bought photosynthesis and Artifact these days. So great to work with. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. They're really great libraries. I use them a lot in my work as well. The other stuff I do. And yeah, photosynthesis is such a treasure trove. It's really, really got endless supply of cool stuff. Nice. Just adds a bit more kind of naturalness, if you like. We got the great sound of Talos, which is, I mean, it sounds very natural too, but it's a much more sort of in-your-face sound. See how together they just... It's subtle, but it's like the room opens up a bit and we get a little bit more kind of bedding in of that sound. And obviously we will fix that up. That's going to be there. And we don't want them there either. We want those. Nice. Do a little bit of random velocity here too, but generally speaking, these are getting louder as we go through. Everything's building up. Cool. We'll fix it up. I think there's a bit of a timing thing there, but we'll have a look at that. Let's have a listen to the whole thing. And again, chorus is really the anchor of this, you know, but that's because it's the choir that's leading this forward. The orchestra is kind of settling into the rest of what the choir is doing. Yeah, nice. So this is any good. Those trumpets are a little bit loud, probably. You know, they're really just playing a bit of a backseat. So we will make sure that we're not getting too... And if I remember rightly, what actually happens here is we just want these... Actually, no, let's leave them in there for now. We'll leave them in for now. We'll check the sheet music at the end. Yeah, we just want to bring them down a bit. We don't really want them to be that sort of audible. You know, they're just helping to provide. Nice. Let's get some woodwind in. Nice. Coming together. Thanks for joining us, Michael, and Torsten as well. If anybody needs to go, of course, go do what you need to do in the day. We all have things to do, but thank you for joining us live. And of course, if you want to come back and check it out, it's always going to be on YouTube after we've finished streaming as well. So these things stay up. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's get some woodwind in, and then we're kind of probably getting as far as we can for the few hours that we've had. Okay. So what are we going to do here? We're going to get the, let's see if we can find our woodwind full ensemble. And let's get some of those big contrabassoons in there, like you said, because I think you're right. That's going to add a lot of kind of that meatiness. We're actually going to use the range tool, I think, to really get some extra range out of these. So you can see pyramid, I can come in here, I can choose low, and I can get right down if I want to. I think G is probably the lowest we go here, but let's have a look. Just going to do this. I'm also going to grab these and layer those in as well. Oh, do we actually have... why do we not have those going for the rest of it? They should be going for the rest of it. That's weird. Just double check that's right. Don't know why they were disappeared. Sounds pretty good to me. Okay. Nice. Now we really want to beef those up a bit. Do you know what I might do? I might even use a little bit of my sub-synth here. Sounds a bit weird by itself. Maybe use a bit of envelope to kind of just make these sound a little bit more. So maybe none of that, bit of that. Sounds a little bit weird, but in the context of the mix, I think it's going to work. And I'm just going to use, just going to try a little bit of this sub-synth. I bought it. I think I haven't actually put it on here yet, but I think I've still got the demo going. So the way this works is get some of this in here. Now I can get some nice sub bass in here. Bit of that thickness. Not too much. That's better. So we can drive that. We're obviously not going to have that much, but... Nice. And that's going to be brought down a lot in the mix. Let's just mix it in with these low strings. Get what we want, and maybe the tuba too. We just want these sort of adding... And obviously, we got to do our sample start delay here. We just want them where you would miss them if they weren't there. Something like that. And we'll also get the high. Cool. Sounds pretty good. Cool. Pause and work on a custom drop by and say, damn, that's amazing. Killing it as always. Thank you, David. David is Trader Music, custom music composer. Thank you very much for stopping by and joining us. David also did an incredible interview with us a few weeks back on one of our live streams. So if you haven't checked that out and you're interested in, well, music in general, but particularly scoring customs or trailers or getting into that world, go listen, because David is just the man in general, but he's also the man when it comes to writing music for the trailer and production music industry, mostly trailers and customs really. And he's done some awesome work. Go check it out. He talks about what he's done, how he got into it, recommendations he has for workflow and, you know, making connections in the industry and how to get ahead in it. It was a really, really great interview. So thank you, David, for the interview and for joining us today. He's the man. Cool. Let's start. I've already put some elements in that I haven't actually added yet. We have some toms. They're just going to be, they sound kind of weird on their own. They're going to be more like that. I think they're not super heavy toms, but we can make them louder in the mix. Let's just do that. Obviously not going to be that loud, but we can bring them right down now. Just do more like. I'm just going to grab these and I'm going to push out like this. So we got more range. They're just sort of pushing away in the background, adding a bit of percussive energy. Next thing we've got is some Piatti crash cymbals. They're really important for this section here. They add a lot. We'll mix them in. They're just really adding some life to those. Dun, 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 that section there. Again, make these like louder. We're not going to want them that loud, but I can bring them down where I want them then pretty easily. Nice. Take a little bit of that mid out there. I'm also going to use a little bit of transient design these just to stop them being too flubby, if you like. Flubby's not really the right word, but having too much sustain. We also have some cymbals and triangles at the end here, just right here. They just take us into that next section. They really just take us out. They don't do an awful lot, but they just help swell up at that very end there. And again, we're going to want a little bit of gain just to get a bit more out of them. Maybe we'll do like 15 and then dial it in. Yeah, something like that. That's going to work for now. Okay, let's get the high woodwinds in. We have high woodwinds, so we can take this. I can't wait to upgrade to Chorus Choir. Chorus is, yeah, I mean, I think it's really great. Hopefully today's giving you a flavor of what it can do. There's so much more. Maybe we'll have a tiny look at the end of some other things. This is just literally one patch. Everything is being done on one patch today, so it gives you an idea of what can be done with just one patch, but there's other stuff. There's some beautiful, incredible lyrical legatos and things in there as well. It's got everything. It really does have everything. Okay, let's get these high woods in. I'm just going to copy paste and then we'll see. We actually have quite a lot going on in the woodwinds, but it's all pretty quiet. You'll never notice it in the mix of the thing, but you'll definitely notice it sort of once you've heard it, once you know what it's doing. It's doing this. This sounds crazy. Let's turn this down. Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Right? We're going to copy that down, put them on the shorts. Those runs. You know, we don't want them on the long. It's just going to sound very messy. So I'm here. I'm going to just grab these runs here. So that's literally just these really fast sections here. There we go. We're not going to worry about having these too realistic because we're not really hearing them in the grand scheme of things, but they do add a bit of a lift, and we're going to take them out of the sustains as well to stop them being so flubby and messy. Let's have a little look here. Cool, cool, cool. That's good. Sounds a bit weird in isolation, but it's going to work. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just try this. Let's try a little experiment while we've got time. Let's put them on trills as well. Sometimes we've talked about this in a video where you can like use trills, but sort of gently put in to just create a bit of the chaos of runs. So by themselves, sounds weird, right? But see, it adds a bit more life. We probably don't want them too loud, but just sort of. That sounds a bit better. That'll do. Nice and quick and easy because this is just a layer. Sounds a little bit more in the context of the mix. I think that'll work. So let's just get these right. They're going to be. If you're a synth person, this is like the upper, you know, the high pad or the high lead or something. This not really a lead, but this is like just adding that upper frequency spectrum. It's really just doubling what's going on in the choir and in the brass to a certain extent. Maybe not the brass, but the choir certainly. And but it's just doing it an octave higher, so it's padding everything out. This is such a full arrangement. You want to be able to hear that stuff. So. Cool. Okay, let's have a listen in context. Okay. That's all the, let's just make a note that that's low so we don't get confused. That's all going to go here. We're really going to want them loud. We might also try them on sustains as well. Nah, I think we just have them. And then we pretty much just have, not exact, but doubling what's going on the trumpets, but like an octave higher, because we can get right up into those high flutes and things to really give the top end of the frequency spectrum some love here. Nope, there we go. Do that, bit of random velocity just to make these a little bit more, not necessarily realistic, but just a little bit more kind of less, completely random. Okay. Just now choosing the layer that I think works best for the thing that's happening at this point. That Jaeger's just poking out a bit too much and a bit thin. We want more of the Poseidon. I think that sounds better at that point. Cool. that's not sounding too bad. And we also have, let's just see very quickly here. We haven't got our timpani in yet. Let's get our timpani in. This might also be a good candidate for some of that subsynth. Let's try a little bit. We don't want to go crazy. We don't want to make it sound too heavy, you know, but this might... It's too much. Nice. I'm going to put a bit of distortion on there as well. Again, because when you're hitting a timpani, it's almost like sometimes kind of crunching up the close mic a bit. That's a bit better. See, it's a bit more... Yeah. We'll dial back that sub a bit because we don't want it too heavy. It's not like a bass drum. It's just... I think that adds a bit more body. And then we'll just bring that up to taste, I guess. See where it needs to go. Okay, let's just... They sound really good. Just dial them back a tiny bit at the end. They're sort of losing definition. We really want them to be quite... Let's just try them in the fluid brass as well. See if that adds anything for us. Yeah, nice. I think it's not perfect, but, you know, gets us kind of where we want to go in terms of... Cool. Sounding pretty good. And then we do have a little bit of piano at the end. Again, this is more like a piano in a room, so it's not... That's not going to work. We can make this work. We can make it work. It's going to be a bit quick and dirty, but we can use something like this, free plugin called Proximity, push it back in the room a bit. Did I even put it on the right thing there? No, I didn't. I'll have to find out where I put that because that's not... It's on the fluid brass. I'll take it off. Yeah, and then we'll just add a little bit of reverb to that, but let's take that off the fluid brass first. We don't want to push them back in the room. They're quite nice where they are. And then I'm just going to use 7 Heaven. And something like the Sanders Hall, which I like, just to give this a bit more... Nice. That's not perfect, but it'll do. It'll sort of just push it back in the room. You know, before we have... There it feels a bit more like it's part of the room. But the biggest important thing here is really just sort of the way it's helping to give a bit of emphasis. See how it just adds a bit of stinginess at the end. Nice, that sounds good. And I think we actually have a staccatissimo here. Let's use it. Nice, yeah, that works. Cool. Okay, not sounding too bad. I might use a tiny bit of subsynth on our bass as well. I actually think if you listen to the Phantom Menace, I think there's something very similar to this kind of subharmonic enhancement going on in the original score. The basses definitely sound a lot bassier than normal. Don't want to go crazy with it, but let's try it. Ooh. Nice. Not too much though. Yeah. Somewhere about there will do us, just to give us a little bit more thump in that low end. Okay, I might try a little bit of proximity on these Jaeger as well. Or maybe I could even, in fact, maybe let's try using mic positions. Really should do more of that, you know, and use some mic positions here. We could just use something like that. Maybe that's going to work. Maybe something like a tiny little bit of that. That might help. It might just help put them in the room a bit more. Something here might just... That might sound a little bit better then. Let's try a little bit of envelope on these as well. We don't want to go crazy, but we can just shape them a little bit. Nice. A little bit more. That'll work, I think, because they're a layer with so much else going on. Yeah, I really like Subsynth. It's great. I think I got it really cheap. I think it's really cheap at the moment. It's a very old piece of or very old plugin. Probably easy to overuse, but used right, I think a more natural way of adding sub than always layering with a sub. Layering with a sub can work great as well, but for stuff like this, where sometimes I think adding a sub bass sort of, you can feel it's a sub bass. With this, you know, the old-fashioned scores, well, I say old-fashioned, but like with scores, certainly from that period of time, it would be more sub-harmonic enhancement than always using a sub-synth, although you could have used a sub-bass too. But this just works in a slightly more natural way for this kind of music, I think. That sounds a bit better. Yeah, we definitely work on really, you know, we need to get that up here, don't we? Yeah, we really need that up there. Cool. Cool. Okay. And same here. We just need everything up here, I think. That's better. That's nice. Same here. You know, we're really just at the top dynamic range here. Nice. Okay. You know what? I think... I don't know if this happens in the original, but they sound a bit high to me. I might double the, or not so much double, but like bring them down an octave in one patch and see if that works. Nice. Let's do more with that timpani at the end. I mean, I've not even programmed half of this, which is not really a boast because I should have done, but we just don't have time with these streams. But here, yeah, we want that timpani pumping away at the end here, pretty much all the way through. We probably want a little bit higher, but that's a bit better. And same with, well, we actually don't have half the brass going on here. We probably need to fix that before we finish. And you know what I'm going to do? I've decided we need Jaeger trombones. They're so good. They're so good. I love the Jaeger trombones. They're going to help these trombones cut through way more. And And then we have 1 or 2 elements to add. We might do a tiny, not really a mix, but just maybe a tiny cleanup. And then we're kind of done, I think. Okay, what I'm going to do, let's bring this up here. So listen to these. Oh, make sure we've actually got the staccatissimo. So good. Let's just make sure we got... Do we have... let me make sure I actually have these right. Minus 125, that's definitely right. And then do we have... We actually never did... These are at a time. That's better. Our trombones be at a time the whole thing. See what they're adding? Without... With... Nice. These talus horns sound great, but the staccato, we're getting a little bit too much of this whoa, whoa, whoa kind of sound for this particular arrangement. That there. For certain things that will work great. For this, it's so busy an arrangement. They're further back in the room than that. You can hear. You can almost make them a bit louder because we're getting rid of some of that sound that makes them sound weird in the mix. This is all up here at the end. You know, this is as loud and as powerful as an orchestra can get, a real, just natural orchestra in a room. So we got to sell it at the end here, right? We're going right up here at the end. And same here. Anything that's not pretty much double F, triple F, we're going double F and triple F. Yeah, that's all good. Okay. Cool. I'm going to do a tiny bit of, not really mastering, I'm just going to sort of, a little bit of compression. I'm just going to use this mastering compressor I like, just 1 to 3 dB maximum, just glue everything together. It helps put the choir in the mix, but still keep it loud. Backward. Nice. And then we use a little bit of inflator just to give it some... In fact, no, I know what we're going to do. We don't really do this very often. We're going to use a bit of tape saturation because this was recorded on tape and there's something about tape that just pushes everything together. We'll try the Lush film setting. Usually works pretty well. Gives it a bit more compression. I like the dirt, you know, a bit of dirt in a Star Wars soundtrack is what you want, right? These were never really clean. They were always a bit rough and kind of weird. And, you know, I want that. I don't want this to sound too much like a sample. And then maybe a little bit of inflator at the end, just to push us a little bit more saturation, but not go crazy with this. And this is far from perfect, but it gets us up to level and it gives everything a bit more grunge. Hey Adam, running question, what size screen do you use? I've just got Cubase 27-inch screen. I can't get the scaling how I would like. I'm using a 4K screen for my main Cubase. I have 2 4Ks and then I have a smaller, I think it's an HD one. I don't actually know much. I know you can change the scaling in Cubase. I'm not 100% sure how. There's something to do with the displays and things, though. It would be worth digging into because there are certain ways that you can change scaling inside of Cubase. And if you're in Windows as well, you can change Windows scaling, which you might want to do to like 150%, which is the normal. But yeah, That's not something I know too much about, I'm afraid, but I know that you can do some changes in there. So check, like, it's called high DPI in Cubase. You'll find some tutorials and some discussion about it online, worth checking out. Okay, let's just do one or two more things here, and then we'll call it done. This is far from a mix, but it's getting us just a little bit more. I'm just going to use a plugin called Fresh Air here, just to add a tiny bit of top end here. Not too much. Just a tiny bit of space there. Yeah, sorry I can't be more help, but I haven't really ever changed that stuff before, but I know that other people have had problems, you know, getting things to scale how they want, and Cubase does have some solutions. I don't know how good they are, but I know that there are certain scaling things you can do, and Windows has its own scaling stuff as well if you were on PC, but if you're on Mac, I'm sure there's similar things, but hopefully you can get it sort of set up the way you like it. Okay, I might just take that down a tiny bit. And I might actually just do a final cut just to get rid of the real like sub 20, 30 stuff. The stuff you're probably not even hearing, but I can kind of tell is there. Something like that. In fact, no, maybe I'll do it more like this, a bit cleaner. Something like that. Maybe up to around 45. Just a dB or two. We're not looking. And take some of that woofiness out. Don't need that. We can have our bass nice and smooth. It's a little bit less, you know, because all that's been taken up by brass and cello and some of the choir. We don't need it. Cool. Final couple of things we can do. Now we've got a bit of fresh air. We don't need these violins to be quite as loud. Sounds weird, but they're not as loud in the mix. A bit more like that. There we go. Tiny bit less compression there. Debating whether that tape saturation is working, but we'll leave it for now. Maybe we won't, because we've got kind of saturation going on with the Oxford inflator. We probably don't want to go too crazy with it. I think that sounds okay to me. Yeah, there's a bit of flab in there. We can definitely, maybe let's just a tiny tighten up on these. I'm sure we can get the envelope in there and just... so you can see what I can do here. I could do... we obviously don't want it to be something. Before and after. That might work. It sounds a bit weird in isolation, but... nice. For a couple of hours work, pretty much there. And you can hear like all those things. This is what I mean about like when we started layering up, this sounds weird to me. Can't hear this in the original piece. Doesn't seem right, you know, when you just the strings. But with everything else, all makes sense. Got any composing tips for film music for someone who doesn't play piano and doesn't understand music theory or scales in conventional sense, but a self-taught guitarist for a couple of decades? you don't have to learn the theory. If you want to, you can do courses or something like that. We have a few courses and you can do those things. If you're not a theory person and you're sort of making music more by vibe and feel, I would just lean into that. It's harder to do traditional music like this without some training. It's not impossible. I mean, I'm not, anybody can do anything they want, but it's harder to understand how to put things like this together. But you can make incredible music just knowing instinctively what works and maybe finding timbres and colors and sounds and ways of combining things that no one else can think of. And in some ways, I'd recommend people do that more, because none of us, unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say none of us, I never know, and I wouldn't want to judge anybody, but most of us are not going to be John Williams or, Jerry Goldsmith or whoever it might be. We're not going to be able to do this kind of music to this level. And even if we could, is that really the world we live in now? Probably not. I'm sure there'll always be spaces for really heavily technical composers and brilliant, orchestrators and so on. But actually, a lot of the world these days is not like that, and it's looking for composers that have different voices, different ways of doing things. Maybe they are more guitar based, like yourself. Maybe they're using the guitar more or writing as a guitarist more. There's a lot of composers that have made a whole living out of combining some of the elements of the orchestra, but adding the distortion and dirtying them up and sampling them and resampling them and looping them. And, I would say if you don't have a background, a theory, that's absolutely fine. You don't need a theoretical background. But then leaning to your strengths, if you're a guitarist or, if you bring that sensibility, experiment with that stuff, and find your voice is the most important thing. Even everybody needs a voice, right? And if you've got an interesting voice, technical ability doesn't matter at all. If you can make music that is interesting and that inspires people and creates emotions for people, I would lean heavily into that, because that's ultimately what's going to get you work if you want to work professionally, or going to get you an audience. Being technically brilliant is great, but there's a lot of great technical composers out there that are not that inspiring. No disrespect to them, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that have a great command of the orchestra, but not necessarily as much of a melody and a sense of, an intuition for that kind of stuff. And vice versa. There's some people that have no idea what they're doing. They can barely work their way around a door. They don't understand the first thing about orchestration, but they just got a genius inside, just some way of thinking about music and sound that makes them incredibly, emotional and powerful composers. So I would lean into that. If you don't want to study or don't have time or haven't ever really thought about studying music professionally, you don't have to do that. But then I would maybe, it's probably going to be the case that you're not going to write music like John Williams, because that does require some technical background. But you don't need to be a John Williams. In fact, I don't think it's a good idea to try and be a John Williams, because he is a genius and he has that perfect blend of technical mastery and just incredible sense of intuition for music. Lean into the strengths. Look yourself, look in the mirror and be honest about who you are. If you're a guitarist, if you come from that world, if you don't have a technical background, you can still make incredible music, and lean into that. So I hope that helps a little bit. It's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but I think authenticity and honesty about who you are, where you're at, and what you're trying to do, and what you can contribute with those skills and that perspective is the most important thing. I think it's one of those things where, it's everybody has a voice, excuse me, everybody has something to contribute, but it's about finding what that is. And for most of us, it's not going to be massive, orchestral stuff. But you may use the orchestra in a different way, or use elements of orchestral instruments, but combine them with other things that no one else would think of. And I think that's ultimately a much more interesting way to work as well. Okay, let's have a final listen to this, and then we'll probably wrap up for the day. Let's listen to the first part again. This is just chorus on its own, one patch, the energetic syllables. And I'm going to very quickly, before we leave, show you a couple of other patches, because I think that would be a great idea. But yeah, the energetic syllables, we're literally using them. We haven't done any programming. We've done these are all quantized. There's no human playing. We're just on max modulation. So this is literally out of the box what it sounds like. Sounds great. The only thing we've added is a little bit of church reverb. This one here, Seventh Heaven. Without that, it doesn't sound as huge in terms of size, but it still sounds incredible. Just closer and a bit more sort of in your face, which for certain mixes and styles, that's incredible. But for this, gotta push back. And then here we're just combining with the rest of our libraries. Well, not every single one of them, but a bit of Jaeger, a bit of Nucleus. Oh, actually, we were missing Glockenspiel. There's a bit of Glockenspiel in this as well. Just playing this. I'll add them in like a chime. We'll listen to the whole thing and just mix these in. And then with everything else added, sounds like this. Nice. For a couple of hours work, I think that's come out really nice. We could definitely polish it up, but that might be for another time. Throw, I won't say the word, but throw at the wall. You can see what has been written, but it's true. Throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And I think it's true. I genuinely think that's a really good piece of advice, actually, is like, more than ever now, we need, people that are thinking in ways that others don't. We need original voices, especially in a world with AI and other stuff. I mean, I don't think that stuff's going to replace humans remotely anytime soon. But what it might do is make us have to work harder to find new ways of doing things. And I actually think we should see that as a positive, right? I mean, it's not remotely going to replace humans, but it might need us to lean into what makes us human. And that's flaws, weirdness, strangeness, craziness, trying stuff, experimenting, having fun, being inspired, getting a few sample libraries and mangling them up into something completely different and just seeing what happens. That's going to be what really, I think, makes you stand out. And I think that's really, really exciting. People that work that way make some incredible music. And if you really do want to, get better at orchestration and music theory, there are courses. We do courses. Other people do courses. There are formal ways that you can learn that stuff. But, you might not want to do that. And for a lot of people, that isn't the way to go. For a lot of people, it's much more about the joy of just getting stuck in with sounds and instruments and just finding ways of combining them that other people don't. I definitely recommend you do it. And join our Discord and share what you're doing, because we'd love to hear it. And, hopefully we could give some advice or, just sort of feed off each other's inspiration too. So I agree. Throw it at the wall, see what sticks. Be you, be unashamedly you, be weird and crazy and odd with your music. And all the best people are, apart from the odd genius like John Williams, who, can sound like Stravinsky and Rimsky-Korsakov and all these incredible people of the past. But most of us are not going to do that. And even if we could, we should probably look to the future as well. Throw it at the wall. I think that's great advice. That's what I want to do more of. I love writing orchestral music, but I need to throw it at the wall a bit more and just, see where it takes me. Music should be an adventure, right? It's like, it's an adventure, something out there that nobody else has done. And it could be you that kind of figures that out and makes it your own. So yeah. Okay, cool. I think we've listened to that. What we'll do is head back to just chatting. Came out pretty well, I think, for a couple of hours work, and we shall wrap up for today. As always, I will eventually make this available in our Discord. It sometimes takes a few weeks to get everything up, but I'm trying to make as much available as we can in our Discord or other channels as well. If we do make them available by other channels, we will let you know, because we really love you guys. If you have any of these libraries or you just want to check out the MIDI, you're more than welcome to dive in. So let's head back to just chatting and we shall wrap up. By the way, I realized we call this just chatting, but a lot of people maybe don't realize, maybe that's a weird phrase. When we first started doing this on Twitch, maybe a year and a half ago, this little scene was called Just Chatting. And it was, I think it had a title and stuff, and that's what we called it. I realize I call it that all the time now, but it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. I just mean like the chat at the end where we're just hanging out. Cool. I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes. So if there's any final questions or anything, I'd be happy to answer them. But if not, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, because if there's any new product releases or any, new videos, new entertainment, new tips and tricks, anything like that, you'll be the first to know if you're signed up and you're subscribed and you have the bell on for notifications. Sign up to the Discord too. That's a really great community. It's growing and, it's free. You can share your music. You can listen to other people's music, ask any questions. We hang out there as much as we can as well. That's a really great growing community too. I came less from traditional music background too. There's a place for us all. 100%. Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I think more than ever, we need non-traditional, different voices from around the world, different backgrounds. Sounds like a bit of a cliche when you say it, but I really think it's true more than ever now, because, you know, what makes us human and unique is going to be more important in music and art in general, I think, in the future. And yeah, all the most interesting people, or almost all the most interesting people, are a little bit, you know, out there trying stuff, throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Is there a link to the Twitch channel? There isn't anymore, because we don't use it. We used to use it to do our streams, and now we don't use it anymore. So I think it's still up. We used to be under the name Maestro. We've kind of changed everything now. We're Audio Imperia for everything that we do, but we don't upload anymore or stream on there anymore. Everything will be done on YouTube Live. So and I think most of the old streams are gone now, but I think I do have some of them stored, so maybe at some stage we'll make some of them available if you guys want to check them out. Is there a way where you guys can listen to my scores, some feedback, thoughts? Yes, the Discord is the best place. So Discord is what we use. We have a community, an Audio Imperia community. The link is in the description of this video, and pretty much all the other videos you'll find it. And you can click that link, join it for free, share your music. We have quite a few people on our Discord community now. We have a lot of great discussion about, you know, people post stuff up, and we all try and give feedback as much as we can. And yeah, that's a great place to just post things, and no judgment, no, you know, we just help each other out, and you know, try and make all our music the best it can be. So yeah, that's probably the best place to share music. And you can also tag us on YouTube as well. We do try and get around to, you know, if people mention us or tag us, do try and have a little look and listen to those things as well. Can't always promise that we will, but we do try and you know, hear what you guys are doing with our libraries or with other libraries, or just generally when it comes to making music. So that too, but Discord is the best way, I think, for now, certainly. Okay, cool. A quick question about trailer structures. I come from pop and future bass, slow transition and fully synced trailer. Is there a basic blueprint to follow? There is, yes. I mean, there can be differences and so on, but generally speaking, all trailer music has certain components. It usually has very roughly an intro, middle, and an end. The intensity usually increases over time. In other words, it's very, very unlikely that Act 3 or the final part of the trailer score will be less intense than the middle or the beginning. So it's usually always a straight, you know, ramp up in terms of intensity, with maybe the odd stop down or break, you know, here and there. And it's usually roughly a 3-act structure. That can change here and there, but if you're making sort of production music, you know, or trailer music for sort of syncing and stuff, my advice would be a kind of intro. Think of it like a film. You have an intro where you're sort of setting the scene. You have a middle where you're really expanding that out into something and beginning to get the emotions going. And then you have a payoff at the end where it's like all those ideas get, you know, kind of joined together in one big rousing end. And then you might have a little outro too. Usually have an outro, but that outro might be hark back to the intro or hark back to a certain idea. But I hope that helps a little bit. Maybe we'll do a stream a bit more about trailer structure, but I would think of it like films. You know, we're taught, generally speaking, it's 3 acts. It's not literally true, but generally speaking, 3 acts, an intro, a middle, and an end. It'll increase in intensity so that the end is always a payoff. It always has to get to that kind of payoff at the end. And then occasionally, sometimes you'll have music that just builds gradually. It'll just go from strength to strength. Sometimes you'll have music that has sort of breaks built in, what we might call stop downs, or, you know, pauses. We might have a moment, a lull in intensity before, you know, we ramp into the next section. Yeah, maybe we'll do some videos on that too, though, because it would be good to do more trailer stuff. I love how Williams uses non-functional harmony. It would be great to have a stream focused on one of his pieces that uses that technique heavily. It's a great example of non-traditional theory. I 100% agree. I would love to do more theory and harmony stuff at some point, somehow too. Particularly with Williams, his grasp of harmony is just incredible. We didn't really dive into it that deeply today, but even in this piece, there are just some moments where what he does doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but it works so perfectly because he has such a grasp of harmony. He came from a jazz background, so he knows how to make any note work with any other, so to speak. You know, there's actually one section of Duel of the Fates. I'm going to put it in Discord. There's one section in Duel of the Fates, and it has the most out of tune, random high woodwind chord you've ever heard. And I never noticed it until I studied the score. And I looked at the score and I was like, what is this chord? It's like a D minor over an E minor, I think. It's weird. And ever since I've heard it, I can't unhear it in this final score. When you listen to it, you're like, how did I never notice that was there? It sounds almost wrong, but it's the energy is so good about it in the piece that you don't notice it. It just sounds like this incredible moment. When you sort of study it structurally, it makes no sense to anybody other than John Williams, who's a genius, but it's such an odd choice, but it just works. I'll find it and dig it out and put it in Discord because it's a really fascinating moment. And yeah, I never heard it, but once I'd heard it, I couldn't unhear it. Thank you for your answer. It's not natural for me to do 12-bar intro, but I'll get used to it. Yeah, it's definitely, I know what you mean. It's quite difficult. Trailer music, the hardest thing with trailer music is structure. I find that the most difficult thing. How to make it structured so it works as trailer music, how to make it predictable but also exciting. It's so difficult. I find structure really hard. I do some trailer music, not as my sole profession, but I've done bits and pieces here and there, and I struggle. To this day, every brief or thing that I do, I'm like, how do I keep the energy up? How do I make it go from strength to strength, but also feel natural? It's really tough. And the only thing I can recommend is practice. Write a lot of trailer music. I have a lot of respect for trailer composers because a lot of people say, oh, it's just easy. It's like pop music. It's just a few chords and stuff. That's true. But like pop music, writing the hits is really hard. Writing good trailer music is really tough. And the more you try it out, the more you're like, oh yeah, I did, just because it's 4 chords or 3 chords, whatever it might be, that doesn't make it easy. And structure is a huge part of the process. And it's really difficult to get right. Study a lot of trailer music and really break down what they're doing to go from, strength to strength, to keep the energy up and to make small but subtle differences that, get things moving forward. Thank you. Long live Audio Imperia and God bless Nucleus. Well, thank you very much, Axel. I'm glad you're enjoying Nucleus, and thank you very much for the kind words, and we're just glad we can help. As I say, any questions, you're always free to ask them on stream or ask them in the Discord. I try and answer as much as I can, but other people will as well if I can't. And yes, I agree. Some non-functional Williams harmony would be good, and I'm definitely going to point out that chord because it's so strange. It's right at the end. Cool. Okay, I think we will wrap up for today. Hope you enjoyed this little dive into Chorus and Duel of the Fates. I thought it sounded great. Like I said, we could go back and do all the syllable building so it really sounds exactly the way it should do. Maybe we will do that at some point. But I think this goes to show, even if you just pretty much just chuck Chorus in there, it just lands perfectly. There's something about Chorus that just fits into almost anything, whether it's hybrid stuff, whether it's traditional stuff, whether it's epic choir, whether it's more muted choir. Any tips on where to find work or sell our music? Very quickly, I mean, that's a difficult one. Obviously, the trailer music or production music world is a place where you can make money, doing music. It's hard to get into. It takes a bit of time and takes some building up networks, and it can be a relatively fraught industry in terms of getting into it. But that's one area, where you're getting essentially paid as maybe a custom composer, or you're writing trailer albums and that music's getting used and people pay a sync fee. And there are Facebook groups and groups that can explain more how that works. In terms of selling music as well, I mean, the other thing that a lot of people are doing these days is going more into the content creation world and the influencing world. And in some ways, the creative world is kind of, there's almost an increasingly blurred space between content creators and sort of artists or filmmakers or music makers. But that's a space where you can seek out opportunity, whether it's selling your knowledge or whether it's selling your music to people that love your music, or whether it's some kind of content partnership. There's lots of different ways of doing that, but a lot of people are working in that space too now, where they may be professional composers for film and TV or for games, but they may also be doing other stuff as well in terms of having communities. And, that's a good way to get your music out there to people too, so that you can get the opportunities. So I think of it more holistically these days. It used to be very separate, but these days, sort of brand and position and who you are and how you're connecting with people is very important. It's always been important, but it's really important these days. So I think more about that too, in terms of like who can you find the audience for your music? And if you can find the audience for your music, a lot of the opportunities come off the back of that. The structure of it's the worst. I agree. Structure of it's just so hard. It's so hard to make something simple, but rousing, emotional, that sort of just works as a trailer piece. It's really tough to do. So definitely practice makes perfect there. Cool. Okay, I think we shall wrap up there for now. If you have any more questions, you can ask them in the Discord, and I will try and get round to answering them if they're to me specifically. In the meantime, happy composing. Whatever you're working on, do share it with us if you're up for it. We would love to hear it, and hope you all have a great day wherever you are, whatever you do. We should be back next Tuesday with more streams, and I'm sure there'll be other videos in the meantime. So subscribe to the YouTube and keep your eyes out for that too. So yeah, thank you so much, guys.